You know, this is going to be a short review. I didn't like it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also leave a like and a comment down below. Thank you so much for playing. Let's go, dude. Okay. Was it one of those animes that really got my attention from the first episode with the whole thing with the guy killing somebody with nothing but his heartbeat and then resurrecting them only to kill them again like 10,000 times? Yes, this is something that definitely caught my attention really early on. But then it didn't get any better than that after the fact. So when you have different shows over here which basically like build up a lot of your expectations, or if you see like the first couple of episodes, normally with the 3-episode rule, it's where if you wanted to try to see whether or not you want to get invested in it, and I know some people would argue that there's a 1-episode rule where if you watch the first episode and then decide whether or not you can become invested, this one passed that test barely, but at the same time, it didn't get any better after that. When you take something that starts out really good, or it has a pretty good premise for the most part, and just absolutely like put it into like this whole box of expectations as to what you actually are going to be seeing, and then you actually take a look at what's inside the box, and it just totally lets you down, that is the Misfit of Demon King Academy. The Misfit of Demon King Academy is a 13-episode action-adventure fantasy anime which was based off of Shu's light novel series of the same name, and this one made its debut over here in the year 2020. The story of the show is actually rather confusing. I mean, it's one of those things too where I really think that it suffered from a lot of different pacing issues, but also just little things here and there too, where if you're not a fan of high fantasy and trying to remember crazy names here and there and all kinds of different dates, places, and histories of demons and humans that have long passed since 2,000 years or something like that, you're gonna get lost. And although the main character being as overpowered as he was, he ended up for me being one of the weakest parts of the show, and I don't want to say that, but it's absolutely true for me at least. But to be clear, is this one that's worth watching? If you do like a whole lot of isekai animes or something that is going to give you a lot of different fight sequences here and there between demons, monsters, humans, the whole bit and what have you, this one would actually be a pretty good one for you guys to watch. But at the same point, one big point that I want to make throughout this video is that for me, for a lot of different shows, story is king. And unfortunately for me, the story left me very confused. And I have a master's degree. We're going to try to make sense of this. So let's first jump into this one, introduce to you a couple of different main characters here and there that are really important to know throughout the show, and let's talk about a couple of these people right before we get into the storyline. First up, we have Anos Voldigoad, and this guy over here is our overpowered main protagonist, who's our showrunner and titular character. His story actually begins really like 2,000 years prior to the first episode, with him being the Demon King reigning over all demons, in a huge war here and there between them and the humans. So essentially put, in order to broker peace with the human race and whatnot, whom he's been at war for like the better part of hundreds and thousands of years, he actually decides, okay, you know what? I'm going to use my vast powers here and there to just end up dying here and there, and using my powers, I'm going to create certain divisions here and there to where the demons live in one realm, the humans live in another one, and so on and so forth with the other races, so that we can achieve peace. And the hero of the humans, Canon, which we'll talk about in a moment, was very, very cool with that. So fast forward 2,000 years later, and we see him being reincarnated and reborn as a hybrid demon of sorts. So he's not exactly a pure demon. I mean, demons at that point, 2,000 years later, after his event, so to speak, have actually commingled with other different races here and there, and also have had their powers diminished for the most part, but he gets reborn as like a hybrid demon of sorts. Does this mean his power has been diminished? No, absolutely not. And unfortunately for a couple other characters, most notably demons who are very, very proud of their heritage, find out he not only does retain a lot of his powers, but he absolutely destroys the shit out of everybody else, including this one unfortunate soul who he kills because of his hubris with his heartbeat over and over and over again as he resurrects him after he kills him every single time. Now that caught my attention in the first episode pretty much immediately. That was one of the biggest highlights for me, and oh my god, crazy. But even though he has this crazy overpoweredness and whatnot, he still has to get caught up on 2,000 years worth of history. So you see a big part of the show is like him catching up on 2,000 years worth of history, and also catching up with a lot of the descendants that he had from way back when, and where they're actually at today. Our next character is Misha Necron. Now she actually is one of the students who actually finds Anos here and there on her way to the academy on their first day in the first episode and whatnot, and she runs into him, and we find out that she's actually a descendant of Ibis Necron, who's actually one of the 7 elder demon emperors, so to speak. She has a twin sister named Sasha, which we'll cover next, but essentially put, Misha's kind of like the more subdued one here and there, who's kind of very soft-spoken, somebody who's a lot more studious, somebody who is very in tune with everything that's going on around her and trying to make sure that everybody else is okay. Kind of an ultimate support character for the most part. She spends a lot of time by herself for the most part, and it's one of those things too where her sister Sasha had kind of rejected her and has pretty much forsaken her too much at this point. But she spends a lot of time with Anos in order to try to come to terms with like trying to find friends again and whatnot. And one of the biggest reasons for this is that we find out that Sasha, her sister, and Misha are actually 2 parts to the same one soul. Apparently they were split at birth or something like that by one of the demon emperors for some reason that I don't even know was explained in the show. But those 2 were split and separated, but we also find out that at 15 years of age, they're going to be thrust back together again and joined back into one body, I guess. Kind of strange here and there, but okay, high fantasy, we'll roll with it. But Misha's able to befriend Anos, and essentially she becomes his right-hand woman for the most part, kind of keeping things in line here and there as far as like his forces or something that he's building after the fact. Which leads me to our next main character, which is Sasha Necron, and she's Misha's sister essentially. And she is known as the Witch of Destruction due to her crazy demon eyes, which Anos thinks are actually pretty beautiful. At first, just like everybody else, Sasha actually kind of rejects the notion here and there that Anos is the reincarnated version of the Demon King, because there's a huge lie that's going on around the school. And that lie is actually that the histories were altered by somebody else here and there, but everybody was led to believe that this other Demon King has already been resurrected, and that is Avos del Hevia. I think I pronounced that right. So knowing this, Sasha actually, when she meets Anos, rejects him outright as the reincarnated Demon King and then challenges him to a group battle. Of course, she finds out later that Misha, her sister, is actually taken up with a friendship with Anos as well and is also now currently on his team or whatever in the academy, and she challenges them to a duel, to which she soundly loses. As the story progresses though, and as Sasha becomes a part of Anos' team because she lost, essentially she kind of starts to get on board with the idea that this guy probably is the Demon King of old. And of course this is very much displayed because of his crazy overwhelming powers, but at the same time she finds that he's actually kind of cute, kind of attractive in some twisted way, shape, or form. But she is super strong, super knowledgeable, and probably one of the most valuable team members of Anos' new squad that he's putting together during his time at the Demon King Academy. And the next character I'd like to talk about is Lei. Now Lei, if I were to compare him to somebody that you kind of know from school here and there, he'd be the kid who sits in the very back of class, doesn't participate, and doesn't really say a word at all, but is kind of friendly for the most part, and if you were to come up to him like during recess or something like that, he'll give you a couple of jokes and a couple of smiles. But there does come a time in the show where there's a little bit of a tournament going on where swordsmanship is actually being put to the test, and Anos actually discovers that Lei is a very gifted swordsman. This actually makes Anos think back to a long time ago when they were fighting the wars with the humans about 2,000 years ago, when he actually had a friend of his whom he would spar with on occasion here and there and battle here and there during the whole like war and whatnot. Now Anos had promised this friend of his from way back when, 2,000 years ago, that he actually would be resurrected at some point and reincarnated into a new being here and there, and that they'd actually become friends instead of enemies. Now Anos cannot confirm that Lei is actually his friend from 2,000 years ago reincarnated, but because of his sword style and the way he fights here and there and the way he carries himself, it really leads him to believe that he actually is. And the last main character I want to touch upon here and there is actually Kanon, the human hero from 2,000 years ago. Now Kanon is super strong and he's one of the biggest saviors of the human race and whatnot, but one thing that he does have that Anos definitely doesn't have is generals who are willing to do absolutely terrible things to the other side. And we also find out later in the show here and there when the demons are actually able to do some race kind of classes here and there by going from the demon side over to the human side by using magic to travel between the two worlds. We find out that not only was Anos' history distorted with this Avos de Hevia kind of posing as him, we find out that some of Kanon's history has also been distorted by 2,000 years worth of history. And Kanon being as honorable and basically as indestructible as he was, we find out that he's actually murdered not by the Demon King but by fellow humans. But that's not the story that the humans are telling each other when we get over there. A lot of the history had been distorted here and there to have a lot of the humans believe that the Demon King had actually killed the hero canon, but at the same time, it's one of those things too where we find out that the web of lies has also been going on the human side as well as the demon side too. And this is a perfect segue over here to talking about the plot of the show, and even though it starts out really cool, it does fall flat in its face here and there, and it's one of those things where I think it deserves a little bit of an examination as to why. Let's take a look. So the story starts out with Anos, who's going over to school for the first time at the Demon King Academy, and he runs, of course, into Misha, whom he befriends and they go to a couple classes with, but he starts to learn from not only the teachers, but a lot of the students and deans that are at the school too, that a lot of his magic that he used to have way back when was actually bastardized and pretty much diminished as far as their powers are concerned over the course of history. He was somehow able to also carry his memories from 2,000 years ago as well, so that when he was reincarnated, I guess he picks up his memories again, okay. But he's able to kind of manipulate a little bit of the magic circles and make spells like 2 times more powerful than they actually could have been over in the classroom. But a lot of the pure-blooded demons, he finds out, have a huge prejudice against demons that are hybrids. So to teach the purebloods a little bit of a lesson here and there, he humiliates one of them, like from one of the Proud Families, in one of the arena combat battles by killing him with nothing but his heartbeat in the first episode. That's the fun part. That's the fun part. That's the One Punch Man part. That just blows your mind. But as we go through the rest of the show, we find out that some poser has actually come up and is now assuming the mantle of the reincarnated Demon King, but he's got to root them out here and there and try to figure out exactly who that is. And as he's building up his team, his army, if you will, at the academy and whatnot, he does run into a couple of different instances where he goes in a couple of fight sequences with some demons that have been essentially kind of brought into the spell of this Avos del Hevia. Where the show really loses me is that there's a whole lot of confusion as to what in the hell is going on and why any of it's happening and exactly who these people are. Now I get when you're actually like an outsider who's just kind of looking into this type of thing that, okay, sure, old friends from 2,000 years ago probably would have casual conversations with each other and whatnot. But as a viewer, that gets me a little bit lost, especially when we don't have proper introductions to characters so that we kind of know who they are. And of course, one way that you could have mitigated this is by having Misha or Sasha kind of asking him questions along the way, or just kind of maybe asking some of the other teachers or the deans exactly like who these people were and whatnot, and exactly what their connection to the Demon King was. But they didn't do that. And as the show progressed, it was one episode after the other where they were basically running into a new enemy, like pretty much enemy of the week type of format. And they did that over the course of 6-7 episodes before they got to the human cross arc. And it's one of those things too where I'm just like, not a whole lot got explained in those episodes. Kind of a letdown. And then when we have the interspecies kind of classes here and there where we were able to go over the human side, a lot of the history and everything else too wasn't very much explained here and there when we got there. And again, as all seemed lost for all of our demon heroes and whatnot who were just kind of fighting their own battles and everybody was pretty much losing at that point, you eventually had Anos who would just kind of whip a solution out of his rear and just implement it for everybody and just save the day. Which was okay, but when you have that in repeat episodes here and there, it kind of takes the danger out of the situation and none of the desperation ends up being there. And when you have a character as overpowered as Anos Voldigoad is, it's essentially like that one kid on the playground where, okay, you'd whip out your sonic death ray that's going to be doing like 2,000 HP worth of damage or whatever, and the other kid along the way says, oh, well, I have a perfect shield. You cannot penetrate this perfect shield. There is no damage that you can do to me. I am perfectly fine. That's it, you lose. That's Anos Voldigoad. And I won't spoil the ending for you guys, but it's one of those things too where it starts out really good and then just totally flops after that, and I'm just like, okay, if I could have had those 4 or 5 hours back, I would, and hopefully this video kind of does it for you too. And with that being said, let's get into my conclusion. After having my expectations essentially killed by this one guy's heartbeat and then resurrected and then killed again, and then resurrected and then killed again over and over and over again hundreds of times, only to have my soul crushed along with my heart, I unfortunately give this anime a 1.4 out of 5 stars, putting it into my bottom feeder class, first ever over here on my channel, unfortunately, recommending that you watch this anime on a dare if you want to. But Doug, a guy, Anos, kills this one guy with his heartbeat and then resurrects him and kills him again with nothing but his heartbeat. Shouldn't that warrant a better score than that? I wish that could save the show. If you just watch that first episode alone, I would say that's good enough. If you're just gonna watch any one of the episodes, just watch the first episode and you're gonna get pretty much everything that you need to get out of it. But the thing is about this anime is that it suffered from a lot of different story and pacing issues, which unfortunately could not bring a higher score out of me. But for a lot of you guys who love isekai animes and a lot of different like fantasy anime as well, you actually probably would like this one. I would probably rank that a little bit higher for a lot of you people here and there who like those specific genres and whatnot. But for somebody who might be a casual anime fan for the most part, you're probably better off skipping this one, or maybe just watching the first episode alone. But that first episode is quite right. I will grant it that, just because it's actually really entertaining to watch. But the rest of it, not so much. And again, going into the confusing nature of the story, the way it was paced here and there, it just wasn't really like quite connecting for me. And same with Misha and Sasha too. Although these two ladies were brilliant in their own respect, they kind of really, aside from the first 3-4 episodes, really just took side roles and even like very backseat type of roles for the rest of the show. You find that a lot of the side characters where they're introduced here and there to where there could be somebody really important, it's like, yeah, they're important for one episode, and then they're basically relegated to the back bench over here, and it's basically just all about Anos and his campaign to find out exactly who the Demon King Poser is. And of course you have the storied history with canon and the mystery surrounding with that over on the human side of things. But the fact that they did not have enough time, nor did they go into too much of the explanations of all that, really brought the story down in all respects. Now, does this mean it's a bad story? Absolutely not. It could be a really good story, but I think that they need to fill in a lot of the holes with this one. And I think that's something that the light novel probably does over in its text here and there, to where it describes a lot of everything else that's going on, and you're able to actually kind of digest it in such a way that it makes sense after so many different reads here and there. This is a type of anime that deserved multiple seasons to try to figure something out. Can't exactly put this kind of story together and just expect to just throw it all up for everybody for about 13 episodes and oh, here you go. No possibility of a sequel because the ending was indeed an ending, but at the same time you need to have like a little bit of simmer time here and there to kind of understand exactly what was going on with it. But what do you guys think of the show? Let me know in the comment section down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also turn on the bell for notifications. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know this is one of the anime reviews that I did where I really didn't like the show, but at the same time, if you did like the show and you have a little bit more like gaps to fill with the story here and there, let me know about that in the comments section. I would actually like to hear a little bit more about it. And with that, I will see you guys soon in the next video. Bye guys!